Timer on? All right.
Oh, wait, who's doing timer? If I do a timer, then you need to wait.
Sweet. Well, while he gets a timer, I'm going to suck up the extra time. I hope that machine boots slow. All right. Everyone, I saw you all here last year, those of you that were here, and I talked about this great thing that I wrote that I was all happy about called Bookie for doing bookmarks because Delicious was going to die. Instead, they took Delicious and they turned into a Franken monster and really killed it, worse than just shutting the damn thing down. So, in the last year, I wasn't going to do this lightning talk, but then I actually took my commit log for the last year of Bookie, and I went, you know what? I've done a lot of frickin' work, and I'm going to show it off. So, first of all, last year I went to a talk here from Isaac Kelly, who basically told me, you did it wrong, grasshopper. Try again, because I had an API that was really awful. So right after PyOhio last year, I got inspired, and I spent 3 months implementing a whole new API, doing everything Isaac said to do, and I redid my whole front end, all in JavaScript doing API calls. Because if you have an API, the most important lesson is to consume your API. So, I was very proud of myself. I now have a pretty API. People can do, things with my application now. Isn't that awesome? But not only did I do that, my app, you bookmark something, we grab the web page, and we grab the content off of it, and we shove it into a full text index. So you can search content, not just things that you remember to tag that day. I was using a library called Decruft, which wasn't available in PyPI. And if you saw my talk, you saw that is one of the deadly sins. Thou shalt put thy package in PyPI. So I went and changed to something else called Readability LXML, except that this thing had no tests. Large swaths of commented out. And it has like 12 different branches on GitHub. So I thought I would do the great coder thing, and I will merge these 12 branches into one pristine package and add tests and be a good citizen. And after 8 days of doing that, I said, screw this, I'm starting from scratch, and I wrote my own. So, B-Readability was born. All right, B-Readability is the same thing, except it has tests, and it's on the G Shop, and you can download it and install it and use it to feed it a URL, and it will download the page, grab the content, and give it to you. Very awesome. So that was all new. So in order to test that, though, I thought, you know what I really need? I need an app that I can just post a URL to, and it will show it to me, and I can read things this way, right? Oh, I don't know, read it later, or what is it called now? Paper or proper or something. Anyway, so I wanted to play with Tornado because that was the one O'Reilly book I realized I hadn't bought yet. And so I bought that book and I did it on Tornado and I pushed it to Heroku. And then I realized, you know what, this thing should have an API. So I built an API on this thing, and so Bookie now calls out to this other app in order to do the readability parsing and all that. So there's actually now like 3 things that I've built in the last year or whatever. On top of that, Bookie now has an invite system that didn't work out very well because people don't like to invite people. I didn't understand this, but hey, I'm moving along. Because I have an API, I wrote a Python command line client, so I can do things like check users and add invites to people and all this stuff. Change migration system to Alembic from SQL Alchemy Migrate, because if you're not using SQL Alchemy, you're doing it wrong. Sass is cool. Responsive CSS is cool because stuff starts to look nice and work on templates, on tablets. So this is where I actually do most of my news reading anymore with my little app, so check this out, And I went and ditched my jQuery backbone, History.js, whatever, and said, forget this crap, and I went to UE, and if you're not using UE for JavaScript, definitely check it out. I love it. And the jQuery backbone folks, we can meet in the hall later for discussions. I'm more than happy. There's actually been a little bit of work on, a guy started an Android app, and there's some work on a Firefox extension. It's my little CoffeeScript test project. So, but what I kind of want to express is this is actually a really kind of big deal with a lot of different things to play with. So, this morning, since invites had failed me so horribly, I figured, why not open up to everyone here at PyOhio? So I spent my morning implementing from invite system to an open sign-up system. You can now go sign up to create an account on a hosted version I run on EC2 that's SSL cert secured and all this kind of stuff. You just go up to bmark.us/signup, and you will see stuff like this that asks for your email address. Then give you an email, you can go sign up. So just to kind of show off, I have docs for my API because Isaac said I should. So, it has example payloads and everything. So come play with my API. Tell me what I did wrong so I can fix it. This is Bookie itself, just basically people bookmarking things. What gets cool is when you go through and actually load up the readable view of what was on that page. So if that page goes away or is offline, you can find it. And again, you can full text search all this stuff. I use Whoosh, which is a pure Python library, and it has swappable backends. So you can do, if we could implement things like Elasticsearch or whatever down the road. And this is the actual Tornado app that just, you give it a URL. This is from Sports Illustrated, recent article. I love to read this stuff in this format versus dealing with Sports Illustrated and the ads and all that kind of crap. And it's open source, it runs on Heroku. 2 commands, you can run your own instance and have fun with it. And then this is stuff like doing the API. When you go to bookmark something, if you use, we have bookmarklets for all this, it'll load the page you're trying to bookmark below with the readable text. This is that whole API to the other app, kind of tie in an integration. So it's kind of slick. And so I encourage everyone to sign up. Got questions, let me know. And if you're into hacking, we've got everything from JavaScript, CoffeeScript, Android, Python, backend, front end, Celery, whatever you want. This is a great project to tinker with. So thank you very much for your time.
So I've been trying to do some data science with Python. So here's what I've learned. So let me show you what I know while I really trying to learn here. So I like working with data. I build data warehouse to pay my bills. I read data visualization blogs. I am new to Python. I love R statistics a lot, just so that others who are watching it don't think I switched my allegiance. I like sports. Then I saw this. Kaggle, you say we are making data science a sport. So it's inviting people to come in and compete working with data. So that sounds cool. What do you need to do it? Well, you need to learn some machine learning. Okay. So then I researched, read some things and found out there's only two things in machine learning. They're just called supervised, unsupervised, just a glorified way of saying, things you're looking for, things you don't know what you're looking for. So you have a bunch of algorithms, not really that many. There's like, as you can see, just 7 over there. I'm sure there are more. And what you really have to do is to split your data into 3 things. You create a training set, you then validate your training, and then you test it, which, I've seen that Python folks do a lot. So you first, take the data, create some models, and then you pick the best model, and then you see how well you did it. That's really all that is. So then I went back to one of the contest that's running right now, which is to identify based on the handwriting to predict what number that is. Then I went to Stack Overflow, and so there is some data there. They split the data for you. They give you training data, they give you test data, they give you validation, they give all these things for you. So all you need to do is just run some code to see how well your model predicts it. So they went to Stack Overflow. There it is. So somebody has tried to do this. They use some Python libraries. They take those 3 data, and then this is all the code that is. That is it. There is not more to this code. So and then they go here, they run some prediction model, they test it, and then they see how well they did. So then I went in to see what all the libraries are involved here. There's just a few libraries here. There's a NumPy, which goes beyond the dictionaries and lists. There's more things to it. There's arrays and matrices, which is actually very cool, because then you can do some matrix multiplication with it very easily. There is some scikit-learn, which is what you saw in the previous slide being used. There's a pandas library, which allows you to look at data frames, and for those Bayesians, there's PyMC. So if you look at this and look back this slide, that's really what they used here. They used a pandas library, they used a scikit library to really run a nearest neighborhood algorithm. So where do you start? Well, you start at PyVideos. SciPy 2012 just concluded last month, and it's coming up on its way. There you go. So it's coming up, and those videos will teach you everything you need to know about these libraries. And there is a Data Gotham coming up in New York City. There is SciPy in Austin next year, and there is Statistics 101 in udacity.com, which is all written in Python. And which books you need? You need these 3 books. All books are code in Python. So Machine Learning in Action uses NumPy. Second one just is Dictionary and List. Third one is coming up, but you can get the ebooks for it. So then I went back and said, okay, let me look at the PyCon attendance for the last 4 years through Google. So there it is, 2007, 8, 9. So there you go, you're really ramping up. But you see 2009, it actually dropped down on the number of attendees who attended it. Then I said, okay, can you predict it? Then I went back and looked at which venues they were run on, and Chicago, the second year they ran, they actually went down. So then he said, okay, what other factors might be involved here? Then I actually went back and looked at a blog. In 2009, they actually increased the seating from 1,000 to 1,500 seating, but actually attendance went down. So anyway, I went to look at Pi Ohio. What do? We collect data. And I saw Eric's talk about collecting data, and I see, well, where is the other data you might need? How much experience? Is there a new attendee? And then I looked at Pi Texas that's coming up next month. See, they don't even collect any data. So here is the thing. So when you look at data science in Kaggle, you will see here is where we stack Python. I know we are a proud bunch, so you want to get up that number. So yeah, there you go. And so let's collect some data and predict the future.
Yeah. Woo! So I want you to imagine for a second that you're a kid again, and you sit down at the dinner table and this is what you see. And you actually hate peas, so you kind of roll your eyes and groan a little bit, and your mom catches you. She looks you in the eyes and she said, "Stop complaining. Don't you know there are people starving in Africa?" Now what she's done is she's given you a kind of an education. Maybe you didn't know that before, and you guys, gosh, I don't want there to be people starving in Africa. It kind of sucks that there are people starving in Africa. But it's not at all clear what I'm supposed to do about that. Eating my peas isn't going to help anybody. I can't send them my peas. I'm just kind of stuck. I feel guilty and I feel paralyzed. Now, I'm not picking on your mom. I'm kind of picking on a lot of people because this is a very common problem. In fact, it's a very common two problems. Here's problem number one. People know that extreme poverty exists, but they don't know very much about it. The details, where are people poor? How poor are they? We don't really understand that very well. We have this feeling, oh gosh, there are people starving, I wish I could help them. But I don't know what I'm supposed to do to help them. I can't just eat my peas to help them. So of course, we need a solution to this problem, and the solution is obviously to build a website. So what kind of a website are we going to build? A website that does these three things. First of all, it visualizes data about global poverty, but with a very specific agenda-driven way. It's going to emphasize the areas of greatest need. It's also going to recommend on-the-ground projects. There's lots of on-the-ground projects. Well, yeah, so only the ones that create the most long-term impact. And it's going to take your money. But it's going to do that in a very particular way. It's in a way that's simple and respectful. What do I mean by respectful? Many of you have given money to nonprofits. Notice this, you give them 25 bucks, and then you get on their mailing list, and you get junk in your mail for the rest of your life, which probably exceeds the $25 that you gave them out of their pockets, right? So wouldn't it be great if there were a better way? Well, of course there's a better way. I am working on this website right now, which is kind of not working. Hold on a second here. There we go. Okay, so this is just a prototype, so don't pick on it too much. But what it does right now, by default, is it uses the Human Development Index, which is a composite index of health, wealth, and education, to color code the map. And you can see that right away, it's blatantly obvious that Zimbabwe is pretty much the worst country overall. If you want to drill down, you can recolor the map, look just at health stuff, look just at education stuff, or perhaps most tellingly, look at wealth stuff, right? Now let's say you don't want just this broad data, you want more specific data. You want to know, well gosh, it sucks in Zimbabwe. How much does it suck in Zimbabwe? So, let's click on it and find out. Well, life expectancy there is about 47. I don't have the data on wealth, so that was a bad example. Let's pick another one. Life expectancy 54, wealth 320. That's $320 at purchasing power parity, so that's pretty bad. That's all year. That's on average, which means there's a significant number of people who are less than that. And on average, 6 years of education. It's comparing this to you, right? Now, I showed this site to my kids because that's what I do, and they click around here and they learn stuff, and they get to places like Swaziland, and they say, "Dad, if you lived in Swaziland, you'd already be dead." And I say, "Yeah, that's right, kids. Let's do something about that." What are we going to do about that? Well, down here I show you these really cool projects that are on the ground that are doing neat stuff, and if you're paying attention, there's only 5 of them because this is all fake data. But it's not going to be fake data for long. What I'm doing right now is starting a nonprofit organization to not only build this website, but to build relationships with the people on the ground who are doing good stuff. And now, of course, you're left with only one question. Please, Steve, tell me how I can help. Well, there's 2 ways that I can think of. So I'm an old Python Zope clone hack. I started Zeta Design and Development back with my friend Chad Whitaker back in the day. And things are a lot easier now than they used to be. But I'm still kind of learning the ropes here. So if you know this kind of stuff and you want to help me out, give me a chat afterwards. The other thing, of course, you could do is use my friend Chad's website to just give me some money so I can keep working on it. There you go.
My new xrandr command seems to have worked correctly, so we get to skip the 10 minutes of trying to get the projector to display my laptop. Brandon Rhodes, I gave a talk a few minutes ago on dependency injection, and because I couldn't get my laptop talking to the projector in time, I had to skip several slides, and someone said in particular that they wished I could have done the bonus round. They saw that I had to skip, and just define for them what dependency injection was. So it's about 5 slides or so. So I told them that I would do it as a lightning talk. So, bonus round, dependency injection. It, as I understand it, or as let's say as I define it, then I can't be wrong. As I define dependency injection, it tries to solve a problem like this. You have a function A that does some work and then is ready to do something lower level. So it calls B. Maybe this goes on for several levels. This makes it hard first to reuse A in situations where you want the action it repeats inside to be something other than B. It makes it hard to test A's code in isolation, because if you fire off A, then B is going to get fired off. And it can make it very expensive to test A unless you use the mock module to make B temporarily be replaced by a simple replacement. Because if B or C do something like talk to a database, open a file, load a URL, your tests are going to be very, very slow, because every time you run a test on A, it's got to do this expensive operation. So I might have, just to reduce it now to a single level, I might have a Google search function that inside uses URL open. That's going to be pretty slow to test unless I use mock to substitute a fake URL open function that just turns a quick fake Google page for it to keep processing with. Dependency injection, and this is especially important in languages that aren't dynamic, where you can't just edit your classes and modules at runtime, and where you have to solve the problem statically. Dependency injection says that we can just pass the callable URL open that's going to perform that action, that really expensive or important action inside of this function. We can pass it as one of the parameters. In production, we pass the real URL open so it can use it, but in our tests, we can pass a fake, and if someday we need to go through a proxy or something like that, we can repurpose this function for a purpose it was never even imagined for by having it, by passing it a URL open that does something completely different than the author imagined. Now, a problem I find with this is it can get annoying. If you have a function that does a lot of useful things, like traverse the file system, you can wind up, when you call it, having to, this guy takes one useful parameter and then just takes a bunch of parameters so that I can give it the standard library calls it needs to use in case I should want to give it some fakes. Official dependency injection resources tell me it's often better to just bundle bunches of functions or routines up, so I can pass my URL utils and OS utils as single bundles around through my program, and that makes it a little less painful. But can we avoid this entirely? Sometimes I use this trick. I notice that in this particular function, some of them do iteration, and so you use a generator instead. But in this case, I give it a query text, and it's going to turn that into a URL, doing some encoding. And then it does a big expensive operation. Then it gets the response that came back and goes through and parses it. And it's possible to break that into 2 pieces and leave myself in charge of the expensive operation the URL open. So then I get two little functions, one of which turns a query text into a URL, the other of which gets an HTTP response and parses, Google's answer about what sites I should go look at. Can break that into two little, simple, easily testable functions that don't make a big call into some other subsystem, and it's easier to reason about and to think about my application and to test it. It can, if done well, result in simple functions, easy to test, and your top-level code in your application becomes simple code that just assembles the Lego pieces together, passes the output of one routine into the input of another, so that all the features of your application wind up happening, but without any of the pieces having to know about each other. My own guidelines are I do this to application subsystems, but where I'll have the guy that assembles the pieces of the subsystem together, and then all the pieces that are easily testable. But I tend to do that to chunks of my application. I do not try to write I've seen this, I actually work on one of these at the moment, but some people have like 500-line functions that assemble all of the little pieces together in a single fell swoop, and I find that hard to maintain. And I often, if I am doing dependency injection and passing in the callable or subsystem because there's no clean way to break it out, I often will pass my own subsystems as parameters because I can design them so that they're single chunks. But I often just give myself permission to use standard library calls without insisting that I inject them, and then I let the mock library save me. Thank you very much.
Hey, I think I'm ready to go. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike. You may remember me from such lightning talks as AGI Hack Day powered by Python. I come to you today to bring you the glorious great news that a project that I've been involved with for a couple of years is back from the dead. From Python Import Podcast is alive and well and trying to even record new content while we're down here. We're pretty excited about it. And every time I come to either PyCon or some other conference, I run into people who've listened to it, and I get tweets or emails throughout the year saying, man, when are you guys going to record some more episodes? So, well, I'm here to give you an excuse about why we haven't been doing that. We really hated WordPress, and we were kind of embarrassed by the site that we had. And a few months ago, we started moving that off of WordPress and onto Blogify, which is written in Python, and it's all nice static HTML, and we don't have to worry about all that, databasey stuff and all the WordPress horrible upgrade treadmill. So in between all the other zillion things that we've had going on, we've been tinkering on the website, and therefore I've not been cat wrangling to make episodes happen. Well, I'm pleased to report that today we got our new site live. And so here is a little preview of that. So finally actually has our logo on the site. We've got nice shiny HTML5 audio tags. So if the stuff is working, you can actually listen right on the site. I don't know if you can hear any of that at all. But anyway, so that's that. It is all nice and responsive, so it will look great on your phone, as well as on your tablet and things. So that's there, so you can enjoy that wherever you go. And I thought, while we were here, and since we're recording some new content, why don't we have everybody say hi to the podcast? And I'm going to pause this here, and why don't we just do on 3, as I get recording here, why don't we just have everybody shout hello from Pi, Ohio, and then like big cheers and applause, and then you'll be famous. All right? Shall we? 1, 2, 3. Hello from Pi, Ohio. And that's that. So we should have new episodes up hopefully the next week or so. So thanks. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Oh, and one last thing. If you had previously been a subscriber, we had an issue with our feed where it was damaged for a while, and then we fell out of iTunes. So if you subscribed through iTunes, you probably aren't now. So go back to iTunes and resubscribe, please, and we can have an audience again. Yay.
So a while ago, I bought a Linode because I wanted a VPS and to play around with Linux, and I use it for an IRC and a bunch of other things, run a few websites on it. Well, after a while, I started like helping people fix their computers, and one of my goals was I'm going to start installing Linux on a bunch of people's computers because A, it makes my job maintaining them a lot easier. I can remote in, SSH fix on when something's broke. Eventually got my mom on Ubuntu and got my grandma on Debian and had my dad run Fedora. So that was a heck of an accomplishment there. And I was able to maintain all of it from here in Columbus. So they just call me up, say, fix it. I run SSH and fix it. Eventual problem I ran into was their IPs kept changing every time their computers kept turning on and off because they like to turn off like every day. So I was like, well, this is getting tiresome. So I went out searching for a, okay, it's not changing, but I went out searching for a dynamic DNS provider. And I guess I won't be able to do live demonstration, but anyways, the idea is, there's several providers out there, like dyingdns.com.org and a bunch of our sites. You have to subscribe to it. You have to have an account, and free accounts, you're only allowed to have like 3 domains or whatever, or 3 IP addresses that are allowed to report in. And they have a lot of restrictions and stuff, and I was just getting frustrated. Like, I could not find anything that was simple to use and something that worked on Linux and I could just run a cron job for and just like be satisfied with. So I invented my own dynamic DNS thing that essentially ties into Linode's DNS manager, and essentially it's a script that I eventually was able to put in a cron job. And yeah, it's locked up. It's moving over here and here. But anyway, so what you do is it's on my GitHub page. My GitHub name is /myano, and the project's called Linode DNS, or Linode what's it called? Linode-dyn DNS. And the idea is you just run /DNS, and the documentation shows you where you put your API key for Linode, and it also shows you what you want the subdomain name to be and what domain you're looking for. So like if you have a Linode that has, let's say, like 20 domains on, that way you could go in and change a specific one. And what it does is, I think it's like down below further on the screen, it would actually list all your subdomains, all your CNAME and ANAME records and stuff. And what the script actually does is it will create a new entry if one doesn't already exist. And that's actually the weird thing about their API calls is if you try to create a new subdomain, that's pointing to the same IP address, Linode will just keep creating the same thing with the same IP address, and eventually you'll see like 20 like A records with the same subdomain and the same IP address. So that's kind of a Linode thing. I submitted a support ticket about it, and it kind of just, I've never tested since then, but I left the code in there to prevent duplicates anyways, because that way my code doesn't have to rely on too much of their API being too smart. But what's fascinating about this is the whole idea about like the powerfulness of APIs is like if you can go from a service like dyingdns.com or .org, and you can essentially create your own version of that if you already have like web hosting somewhere. And actually, I recently found out Cloudflare has an API for their DNS manager where you can do the same thing, and that's my next project, is to create a similar script for Cloudflare, so you can just run a cron job and then essentially just distribute your thing along with your API key on multiple machines, and it'll just update this. So that way you can just do SSH home dot whatever your domain is, and it will point to that machine as well. So that way you don't have to, it will automatically update. And my cron job runs on my home machine like every 4 hours, and same thing on my parents' computer. So that when they call up, I don't have to worry about networking issues or IP addresses up or anything like that. It just automatically takes me in there. And I really wish I could show you this, but I already started on that. But if you go to my GitHub page, it's /myano, and it's the Linode-dyn DNS page, and the documentation's there, and it has command line arguments using argparse. And a quick comment about argparse: if it doesn't work, just sudo pip install argparse, because I believe it's Python 3 thing, Python 2. I'm not. It's 2.7. Okay, yeah. And I just recently moved to a new. I'm moving away from Linode, but I'll say that for another reason, because they had a bunch of downtime issues last month. But anyways, if you do use Linode and you want to have your own dynamic DNS thing, it's very fascinating to use, where you could bring up something and look for a Cloudflare one coming soon for me. And the idea is like you can create your own if you're not satisfied with my code, or if you come across anyone else has a DNS major, you could do the same thing as well. So it shows you the powerful of APIs and how you don't have to rely on like third-party services like a website to do all this for you. So that's my talk.
If you ready? Okay. You may have seen the talk was it last year or a couple of years ago on HTSQL, which is a querying tool. I'm going to show you that really quick in case you didn't see it. Basically, what we have, suppose we've got a database belonging to a small medical practice, and we want to expose it for reporting by HTSQL. Well, we install HTSQL, and we run, this is the entire configuration step to get the HTSQL server running. And once it is, we're running a server that is going to respond to URLs. Where did my mouse go? We'll respond to URLs like this. So like if we name a table, the incident table, we get a nice little report on what's in the incident table. Just that easy, easiest query tool out there. Now, there have been a few nifty improvements. Like now you can also get metadata out of this. So we're getting a list of all the tables in our database. Similarly, there's a column table. If you want to join, the really nice thing is it understands, it'll read the foreign keys, and if there's a relationship between the incident table and the patient table, we don't need to get specific about how that join works. It reads it right out of the relationships and runs with it that way. Similarly, it can do the sort of aggregation type functions that you expect, like a count. We're going to skip this one. I think that one has an error. One of the interesting things that is new is it's got, it lets you do nested records like this. So that's a pretty convenient way of when we want to report on an incident and we want to just skip down to there. Another thing that is really nice is now there are nested queries. So we can get a report. Usually what we'd want to do, the simplest way to do it is to report on an incident and then with every row of the incident report on the patient it belonged to. But what if we want to get kind of a nested summary of what's going on with each patient? Then we can do this nested subquery where all the incidents are grouped up under a single patient. There's also a new shell, which this is like their first pass at doing something like an IDE for this. I haven't experimented with it much, but right in here we've got that. Ta-da! So that's running within there. Uh-oh, my orange light is blinking. That's crazy. And then finally, something that I think is a really nice new aspect is that they've set up a nice API so that you can use HTSQL from within Python. So if you're doing a read-only application, you might not want to set up an ORM like SQL Alchemy or something. You might not want to fuss with that. You might do it just this simply. You import HTSQL, point it at your database, and then there's this HTSQL produce. And if we run that, that's sending, oops, if we run it, I said, OK. That's sending us back a Python object for every row that we discovered. So it's really easy to use that to plug it into something else. If you want to look on my blog, I did a post not long ago about how I did a Flask application with HTSQL like this for my data source. If you want to maybe create something a little more sophisticated than, say, HTSQL will do on its own. So htsql.org, it's open source. It's free for all the open source databases. They're nice folks who do it. Have a ball. Thank you very much. What did I leave out? Post-traumatic stress disorder for